Hey guys, welcome to a brand new episode of the Dubai Real Estate Podcast. This is episode 2 of season 2, where we're speaking all about buying land in Dubai. There's a lot of confusion on this. Some people think they cannot buy land. Where can they buy? What the price is like, etc., etc. So in this episode, I'm going to break that down for you. And especially this whole season 2 of the Dubai Real Estate Podcast is dedicated to buying land and building your own property in Dubai. So if this is of your interest, please do subscribe to my YouTube channel, hit the notification bell. Your likes and comments are really appreciated. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcast, please do subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. Spotify listeners, please do follow. Now, without wasting any further time, let's cue the music.
All right, Tahir, great to have you here for episode 2.
Same here, Raj.
The preparation for this episode was really shocking to me because we've got a simple question to answer, which is where can you buy land in Dubai? And
Right.
as such, where can you not? But there are so many details that fall into this. So
True.
maybe a great place to start is how has Dubai set itself up for investors when it comes to land? There are certain places you can buy and certain places you can't.
Right.
What dictates that?
I mean, look, Raj, the two types of land, freehold and the non-freehold. Most of the new developments which are happening, they're all freehold. There's certain old pockets of Dubai which are non-freehold still, but that's not where the action is today. Most of the new areas which you see coming up are the freehold areas. So to give you a very simple answer, it's either freehold or non-freehold. For investors, especially overseas investors, people who are non-GCC or non-locals, obviously freehold land is something which appeals to everybody.
Who do you buy the land from? And you mentioned GCC and local investors. What are the rules? Is there separate rules for that demographic?
So what happens is the non-freehold land can be only purchased by either local UAE nationals or the GCC nationals.
Okay, so does that mean that all land across the UAE
Yes.
is available to purchase freehold?
Freehold?
If you're GCC, which is you're from the region,
Yes.
or you're Emirati.
Yes.
Okay, so for overseas investors, there are certain pockets, right, jurisdictions.
Yes.
Who owns that land currently and who do you buy that from?
I mean, see, it depends. Now, it could be either if it's, for example, if it's a land for maybe a building or a villa, whatever, depending on where it is, it's initially sold by the master developer who's developing that particular community.
Some examples of master
So
developers.
say, for
would be-
example, let's take about Dubai Hills. Okay, Dubai Hills is a master development by Emaar. If you see, there are plots for sale. Now, originally, obviously, Emaar sold those plots. But today, if you see, Emaar is almost sold out on plots over there. And if you want to buy, you go to people who've bought and you buy it in the secondary market like you would buy any other property.
Yeah, okay. And then in those scenarios,
Yes.
you're looking at essentially taking ownership of the land.
Yes.
And it's at that point that you can begin the building process. Or is there any other hurdles or things that need to be registered?
Look, Raj, depending on what is the purpose of the land, there are certain ways you assess land. Very similar to how you would assess an apartment. Okay, if it's an apartment, you would see, okay, which floor it is, what is the view, what's the size, how many bedrooms, these are factors. Now, when it comes to land, especially when you're buying a land to develop on it, what you need to first and foremost check is obviously the land area, the plot area. That apart the plot area, you would also see the FAR, which is floor to area ratio. What the FAR means is how much can you build on the land, right? So giving you an example, say the land is 10,000 square foot. And if it's a villa plot, and say if the FAR is 0.7, okay, that means you can build 7,000 square foot on that plot. But if it's a building plot, the FAR could be 2, which is you can build twice the land size on that plot. That's 20,000 square foot. So this is just an example. So you need to check how much you're allowed to build. And also, what are the timelines? Because certain master communities set a timeline to finish, okay? Not all, certain. So you also need to, before you go in, you need to understand what are the timelines and whether are you prepared to, finish the project or the villa or whatever in that stipulated timeline. Or are you, because if you're buying land just to buy and keep land for the time being, and maybe you want to develop after a few years, then you need to just make sure that, the timelines are there, because some master communities come with a stipulated timeline, not all.
Okay, and with the FAR, if it's 2,
Yeah.
does that mean 2 stories?
No,
Is that how you achieve
again,
double?
That again, every plot comes with its defined height, whether it is a G+1, G+4, G+6, G+10, or G plus unlimited.
G
right?
being ground.
G mean ground. Also, what you need to check is certain communities give you basements to use free of the FAR without calculating it in the built-up area. So that is also an additional benefit, because when you build, say, especially if it's in a villa, if you have an additional basement which you could use for, maybe to make a party room or movie room or whatever, a home gym, that's an additional area, and that definitely adds a lot of value to your property as well.
Okay. With master developers and with people that are selling on the secondary market plots of land, where are these plots of land currently listed? I know you as a consultant have access to a book of land that maybe isn't available on the mainstream market, but where are the websites where people can kind of, look, those who are curious can find out
I'll
about
tell
plots?
you what, there are a lot of different places where you can buy land. It always starts with what's the purpose, okay? Whether you want to buy to build your own home, are you buying to make a small building on it, to rent it out, to sell, or, you need to define the purpose first. If you're buying, say, for example, a land to build your own villa, obviously you would see where do you want to stay, and then decide which community is available in that vicinity, which options do you have closer to where you would like to stay. If it's being done as a business, as an investor doing it to create a rental portfolio, then that's, you need to see which area is going to give you a high ROI.
Where are those listings?
That you could see. You could also see it on most of the major websites like Property Finder or Bayouth. You can get to see that. But again, you will not get the real accurate information. Obviously, you need to speak to a specialist depending on your goals and your, targets. Then obviously I can suggest where you can do this.
So would a good starting point be for someone who's maybe not spoken to you first? Obviously, the best thing to do is to speak to you first. But if somebody doesn't, if they find a listing on a property website, they can bring you that listing and say, I've seen this. It looks like it's of interest.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a lot of my clients who see, who see different listings. They send it to me. Obviously, we can discuss further and give them more information on it.
And in season 1, when we talked about master communities, you made a lot of content about it. You've also talked about sub-communities.
Right.
Do sub-communities affect the way that somebody buys land? So if you're new to this episode, could you also explain maybe again what sub-communities are?
So what sub-communities are, that I'll give you an example of Dubai Hills. Dubai Hills is a master community. Within Dubai Hills, there are a lot of sub-communities. So these are basically smaller pockets within the master community. So if you go to a Maple in Dubai Hills, a Maple is basically where you have townhouses. You have townhouses starting from 3-bedroom going up to 5-bedroom. You go to a Sidra are individual villas starting from 3-bedroom going up to 5-bedroom. Then you go on the other side, you have parkways, fairways. There you have bigger villas and plots, both. Some developed by Emaar, some sold as plots. Then you have Emerald Hills, Hillsview. So these are different sub-communities, and so you could say, in a way, like a smaller district within the main district, which is being created with different products and different types of houses.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to, just circling back to GCC Nationals and Emiratis, do you actually sell to them as well yourself?
Look, I can sell to anyone depending on which property they want to buy.
Yeah.
Right? If you ask me personally whether am I selling a lot of non-freehold areas, the answer is no. Because most of my investors are from overseas. Of course, I do have a lot of GCC and local clients as well, but they are also buying freehold, because what happens is when you buy a freehold land, you can sell it to anyone. You're not restricted on selling it to a particular group of people.
Okay, that's a huge point. So for clarity, what you're saying is GCC Nationals and locals have an additional interest in true freehold, which anybody can buy, because of the sell-on opportunity.
Absolutely.
Because they can sell it onto the whole world, as it were, as opposed to something which is purchased only for GCC nationals that therefore can only be sold to GCC nationals.
Yes.
So that's worthwhile knowing if you're a local investor, i.e. a domestic investor, an Emirati
Absolutely.
or GCC national.
And that's the reason even a lot of, locals and GCCs, they're buying all over, because then in the future when they want to sell, they can sell it to anyone.
Is there a difference in price per square foot when you look at the listings of these?
Yes, because look, first and foremost, in the non-freehold areas, there are hardly anything which is there for sale. Like, usually you will find those buildings owned by one single individual renting it. So when you talk about all the sales which are happening, they're more in the freehold area.
Okay, and how many areas are there, true freehold areas? Like how many of them is there across Dubai? And I'm sure if there's many as you're about to say, if that is the case, maybe just list off the 6 or 8 that are most valuable to your clients.
Lots of areas. To give you the more known ones, obviously downtown, Business Bay, MBR City, which is coming up, District 1, Dubai Marina, JBR, Dubai Hills, Emirates Hills, all these areas are freehold. Furjan, JVC, Arjan, Nashama Town Square, all the new areas which have come up, most of them are freehold.
Mm-hmm. Where's the majority of interest with your clients at the moment?
Very difficult to answer because it depends on the client profile. Most of the clients are looking at prime, super prime areas currently. At the same time, a lot of clients also building their own property portfolio for investments. Then they would look at areas like JVC and so on. But obviously areas like downtown, Dubai Marina, La Mer, these kind of areas are super high demand.
What's the most common thing that people are building on the more popular plots of land? What's the most common use case?
Villas.
And is that to live in or to rent?
Some are building to live in, some to rent, and some to sell it and make a profit.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Without giving away all your kind of like back office numbers, is there a rough ratio?
Well, Raj, to put it in a simple terms, for anyone to understand, because a lot of time people don't know what it is, but I'll give a very simple example. Something which sells for 1,000, sells for 1,000 dirhams. When you buy land and you build, your cost is not going to be more than 600 to 700 dirhams for the same thing. So that's the kind of profit margin you have when you buy land and develop and sell.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're
this is the thumb of rule number,
yeah,
which is applicable whether to a building, villa, whatever, overall in Dubai.
So you would need to put out a capital expenditure of around 60 to 70% of the eventual selling price.
Yes.
Okay. Sticking with villas then, which villas are most popular? Are we talking about premium, luxury, mid-market? And I know it's area dependent and client dependent, but just as a rough bucket for an investor.
As of now, villas across Dubai, villas and townhouses across Dubai are in super high demand. But if you ask me to tell you the top places, Dubai Hills, Palm Jumeirah, Emirates Hills, District 1, super, super high demand.
Mm-hmm. What's going on with regards to La Mer and... Because you've spoken about that on previous episodes.
Look, La Mer again as a community, as I said, now the first residents are starting to move in as we record this episode. The villas in that community are starting now. Some people have started building. So I think another couple of years and that community will be really, really amazing.
Okay, so that's on the new and cutting edge side.
Yes.
On the Palm side, in a previous episode in season 1, you talked about us now for the first time entering the renovate and flip world. In the Palm, is there an opportunity to take a building, tear it down, rebuild it?
People are doing that. People are doing that because now it's very difficult to find an empty piece of plot. So old villas which are not in good condition, obviously they're not fetching a very high price. They're at a better price than something which is already done up. So people are buying that, refurbishing. Same thing is happening in Emirates Hills as well. People have bought old houses, not in good condition, bad condition. Either they are tearing it apart completely or refurbishing it completely. So even in meadows and other communities, this is happening.
And in episode 1 of this season, you talked about you could participate in buying a piece of land in Dubai and building it up and building your own property for as little as 3.5 million dirhams all in, as long as you're prepared to wait 24, 36 months. Can you talk to us about Al Farjan and Nadal Sheba? Do they still remain the more affordable areas in Dubai? And is that where you'd be spending that kind of money?
As of now, Al Furjan is one area where someone who's looking at doing it on a restricted budget. Obviously, there you could get a land for about 1.5-2 million dirhams. Even Nadal Shiva Gardens, around 2.5 million dirhams, you could find a piece of land and you could build. So these are the places where you could start. There are some other places also like Jebel Ali Hills, which is cheaper, but it's right now it's not really started picking up. Sales are not really there at the moment. You know,
when you're qualifying a piece of land, how do you qualify it if you intend to live in it, and how do you qualify the piece of land if you intend to be a landlord and rent it out?
That's a personal choice when it comes to decide whether you want to live in it or no. Because it depends on the budget, the size you need, where do you want to live. So that's something which is personal choice. When it comes to you're building to rent, obviously it's numbers. You need to see which place is giving you a higher yield. Compare it with the ready properties. Okay, if I'm developing a 5-bedroom villa, what is a 5-bedroom villa in the market currently renting at? So take that as your eventual rent value, and then you calculate what's your investment going in, and that you will get your, what ROI you can get.
That's some of the projections that you can offer as well, right?
Of course. When we sit down with the client, we give them a complete overview of what they can get, what they can achieve, and how we can do it.
And now the markets in Dubai are very, very open again, expos in full effect. A lot of people are coming to see you. We're even noticing as well, producing this podcast with you, that your time has become a little bit more restrictive.
Yes, that's true.
If somebody's coming to see you in Dubai, how much time should they set aside to look at and absorb contextually the areas that matter?
I would say 2 to 3 days is good amount of time to have a look, and then probably go in further to understand the places, to see the communities. 2-3 days is good enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then just to put a final cap on this, tell us about some of the areas that you cannot buy, the overseas investors are kind of restricted
today,
from buying.
a lot of people, especially if they come from India, they think, I want to buy in Bar Dubai. You cannot buy.
Really? Why?
Because that's non-freehold.
Wow.
So you can't really buy in those areas. Certain pockets of Jumeirah, you cannot buy. Jumeirah, Sukim, even Al Barsha, the area near Mall of Emirates, most of it is non-freehold, barring maybe 1 or 2 buildings. So, so there are these kind of places which you can't buy, but then again, there are a lot more places where you can buy than you cannot. So I would always say focus on where you can buy.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. Amazing. Well, that's all true and accurate information at the time of recording this podcast.
Yes.
Is there anything else that anybody needs to know in terms of like contacting you or instigating a conversation with you about this?
I mean, look, they could just get in touch with me on any of my social media handles. I'm on Instagram, on TikTok, LinkedIn. They could email me on tahir@trustedhomesdubai.com, and I'm always happy to help.
Excellent. And in terms of following this podcast series,
they could listen to this if they are listening to this on Apple Podcast, I would request them to give us a 5-star rating and review. On Spotify, we are also on the other major podcast platforms.
And YouTube, we've got a dedicated playlist set up, so make sure you follow that playlist and get the full season. Thanks so much, Tahir.
Thank you so much, Raj.